Hello and welcome to the Perk Coffee Cast, episode 8. I'm your host, Andrew Capral, joined by co-owners of Perk, Alan and Philip, going this week by Turkey Butt, and with a special, can't say it with a straight face, joined with special guest Alyssa Bell, who is the wholesale manager at Perk. So,
Ding.
welcome, Alyssa. So as the joke runs old, I'll use it one more time. Alyssa, we'll come back to you. But this week we got to start off with, what are we drinking today, Philip?
This is the Colombia El Tambo. And the joke is, in Spanish, in English, sorry, Spanish to English translation, El Tambo means the Tambo.
No.
Got my joke out of the way early.
All right.
I need a better Chris Farley voice for that.
He was always like out of breath and
Spanish for El Nino.
So what's some of the? Do you want to dive into the background a little bit, of overview of El Tambo?
Sure. Real quick, I will. Yeah, this coffee is from Cauca. I try to say it correctly if I can. In Colombia, which is central western Colombia. It's a sort of kind of grown about mid altitude, so 1,400 to like 1,800 MASL meters per above sea level, and it's a fantastic coffee. It's a varietal is Castillo and Colombia, and I'm sure we'll dig more into all those things and how they affect the flavor. But it is just a super like crushable coffee along the lines of what we talked about the Brazil Legender a little bit, but definitely different as well. So just a really terrific coffee that fits pretty solidly into our blue or mild bags.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think this is our first time going back to the mild coffees. So
right.
What's the reasoning behind that, Alan? What's the driving force behind getting back to those sturdy coffees?
Yeah, so and maybe there's a parallel here. On one hand, I love this coffee. Like, it's a really great coffee, and we have a core spot for a washed Colombian coffee, just because it does offer a mild coffee that is an alternative to something from Brazil. Like, the washed Colombian is it's always a little bit cleaner. It's still sweet, but it's a little smoother. It has less of the kind of bite that the Brazil can have, which is a good thing if you're looking for that. But sometimes you want something that is just a little bit, more silky and mellow, and this has a great, it presents that in a really, really great way, and it fits just perfectly in our lineup. So it's one of these coffees that we just keep coming back to, and it's at the kind of the core of what we do, right? And the parallel to that is our wholesale business. We've talked a lot about what we do with customers, direct online, or when they come into our shops. A lot of these have been coffees that we're serving on espresso or manual brew, but we always are doing wholesale kind of in the background, and that was really at the core of what Perk did. It was the vast majority of the business for the first 8 years or so.
Right.
So this was kind of a fun way to bring in one of my favorite people, Alyssa, who has taken on our wholesale department and is absolutely crushing it. And talk about a great coffee,
and hopefully meet your cat.
Oh, she's locked away because I'm afraid that she'll just completely. But maybe towards the end, I'll just bring her out.
That's a regular occurrence sometimes with Philip. So that's a great opportunity. Alyssa, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself beyond or including your role as wholesale manager? Who is you?
Who am I? I don't know. At this point, I'm like, a lot of who I am is working in coffee. I've been working in coffee since 2012, so like this will be my 11th year. Woo woo. I kind of got started just as a person studying sociology and environmental sociology. I was actually got really interested in the farmer side of stuff first. Um, and then as someone who's drank coffee my whole life, I was like looking for a job that kind of was something I already liked doing, brewing coffee. Um, and just got my first job at Cafe Campesino as a barista, quickly became a manager, and then kind of fell in love with like the science side of brewing coffee. And then the manager side, I feel like I've always been one of those people that it's obvious that I'm passionate about coffee. And then I like to think I'm an organized person and get stuff done. So almost everywhere I've worked in coffee, I eventually became a manager. And so that was most of my background for 8 years before I started doing the wholesale side. And for folks who maybe don't know, wholesale is the business to business transactions that coffee roasters do. So my job is to make the other business owners happy and our own business owners happy and kind of help be that person in between I like to think of it as like, I'm making all of these people's dreams come true because they might be looking for something specific. And then we have certain things in our own offerings and finding those like spaces where we can make it work with what we have and what they're looking for. Yeah. And also, since I managed for so long, I really understand that feeling of urgency for when stuff goes wrong and when you just need help with something. Sometimes other people who maybe don't have that background, they don't understand that feeling of like this. Some people are just like, it's just coffee. But when you're a coffee shop, it's like, that's my whole business and it's a fire and I need help now. So I always like to say the biggest part of my job is just like being there and being responsive too. So it's a little background about me and what I do.
No, that's really cool. And I mean, I think that reminds me of something that Philip has said a few times, that, sometimes it feels like it's just coffee, but you can be a linchpin in someone's day, right? Like maybe you're giving coffee to a surgeon that goes and gives heart surgery, and you could ruin the whole heart surgery. Hopefully it's the opposite way. I know I purposely attacked it.
I'm an accomplice in a murder.
Have a true crime podcast about.
Yeah, what if the person was about to go rob a bank and he needed a cup of coffee?
Oh my gosh, we're accomplices every day.
That's awesome. I love it.
That's bleak.
The contents in this podcast may or may not be true and do not reflect the values of the owners of Perk Coffee.
It's comedy.
That's funny. Yeah. So, what is there something you think that happened as far as like I don't know if there's an event or it's a slow evolution that led you to want to go from that customer side, being kind of on the barista and transition to the wholesale manager or the business to business front, or was it just kind of a
I'm gonna say, like a lot of people, COVID made you evaluate what you wanted to do with your life.
Sure.
Because I knew I really liked working with coffee and I really liked training people. And sometimes the day-to-day of managing an actual coffee shop can be very, very stressful. And I think that having a 9 to 5 became more and more appealing so that people, even though sometimes I'll get emergency phone calls of people needing stuff on the weekend, that happening is way less often now, but I still get to do all the things I love with coffee. And I really like helping other people put out those fires. It's like I get to be 1 degree away from the fires that people are putting out. So it's like I still get to feel like I'm helping solve problems, but I maybe don't have the sense of everyone else being like, I need this, because it's like I only have a few people telling me that versus when you're managing a coffee shop, it feels very real.
Yeah.
Very like, you got to do it right now. So, yeah. During COVID, I was like, because there were so many fires to be put out, I'm like, is this what I want to continue doing forever? But I definitely want to be in coffee. And so just exploring what are your other options in coffee outside of just being a barista and a manager. So that led me to wholesale.
I'm gonna add something to that. So this is a hypothesis about Alyssa. So I met Alyssa, I guess, pre-COVID, and she was managing it at one of the shops here in Atlanta. And I remember your competition routine in Brewers Cup, where so in addition to just like with that, like in addition to doing a full-time coffee job, like nerding out on coffee, on your own, and you did this routine with an AeroPress where you separated out, so like you ground coffee, you separated out, the bits that were too fine, and then you added them back in at the end, and correct me if I'm misquoting you on any of this, but one of the reasons you gave for it was that you have customers that come in, they spend, I mean, what's a lot of money for a bag of coffee, and that shouldn't go to waste. So even the coffee that doesn't get ground perfectly, you're adding it in at the end where it would still have the right extraction. They could get the most out of it and not waste anything. And I took that as, this is you, even in a competition that's all about you and how you brew coffee and whether you can produce the best cup of coffee or not. And you turned it around and you made it about your customers and providing them value and serving them in the best way that you can. And I don't think it's coincidental that that continued on to now. The 9-to-5 job that you chose in coffee is still one where at the end of the day, like, you're just trying to serve other people and make them happy. And I think that is really awesome. That's why it's such a good fit for you.
It's funny that you bring that up too now, because I'm thinking about it. I'm like, a lot of my job is helping people with that waste aspect, because sometimes, especially coffee, they'll be like, oh my gosh, I'm spending this much money on coffee, and they worry a lot about how much you're spending. But there's so many ways, specifically with waste, that you can help people see the value of spending more and coming up with better systems. Also, if you can't tell, I feel like when I competed, part of the reason I did my routine that way is because I like to focus on other people more than I like focusing on myself. And so to me, it's like much more exciting to talk about other people than it is to talk about me. So I'm like, if you can't tell, I sometimes struggle talking about my own experience.
Well, and that kind of ties in because the coffee used in the competition was also a Wash Columbia, correct?
Yes, it was. Yeah,
Very
especially, cool. I mean, and with Tambo, in competition and with my current job, I'm just like, what are those coffees that are something exciting, but still something really approachable that almost anyone would like? That's always what I appreciate about coffee, is just, we all like coffee. People love those like really weird coffees and really excited, and I love those coffees too. But it's like super exciting when you get a coffee that your like mom will like too, that you can take home to them for Christmas, and we're both like, this is a really great cup of coffee, and they're not going to be like, this is weird, this doesn't taste like coffee. So
yeah.
No, I love that. That is what I've been finding this summer, especially like being on vacation up back home in Michigan with family. It's like wanting to share all these cool flavors that I've been experiencing because of the podcast, and like a lot of I had to trick people into drinking some of the wild coffees, and it was a great experience because they were like, "Oh, I don't like the wild coffees." I was like, "That's interesting because I've been blind giving it to you for the last week." I just had a mild bag out and was giving them the Reiko.
And especially
even that,
I feel like when you look at wholesale numbers versus like our retail numbers, it's really obvious that our wholesale people, they want those really approachable coffees, and that's what they're looking for, is crowd pleasers. While when it comes to maybe people who are buying coffee on our website, that's where we're like releasing sales and crazy stuff. So that's why El Tambo is just, not only is it a really great coffee, but it's just something that our wholesale customers can be excited about, and specifically our wholesale customer Fiddlehead, because it's also a woman-produced coffee, so it kind of fit like in so many categories of things that we wanted.
And I don't remember, did we say that explicitly in the podcast yet? That this is okay. So do you want to give the background on that? Why El Tambo is a perfect fit then, Alyssa?
Yeah, it's perfect because it's that quintessential brown sugar flavors of a Colombian, but it's also a woman produced coffee. It's produced by Asbu Cafe, and we get it through Cafe Imports. We were kind of looking for a great fit for Colombia and looking for a woman produced coffee. And so when we were talking about what do we want out of both of those things, we wanted something approachable and something that we could buy a lot of, and we knew people would buy a lot of it. And then once we found that good fit, that's when we reached out to our wholesale account Fiddlehead. They're in St. Louis, Missouri, which is kind of like, we're known for being a Southeast brand, and you're like, how did we get connected to someone in Missouri? The owner there, Darcy, she used to pack coffee at Perk when she lived in Savannah.
Oh, really?
And I really think it says something about Perk that when someone leaves, they still want to like stay connected, and they're like, I want to have your coffee. And so it's a woman-owned coffee shop, but it's also managed by a woman, and so they're very much about supporting women as leaders. So when we found a woman-produced coffee, that is also something that they like, an approachable coffee. They buy a lot of Brazil and Colombia, so it was like super obvious, like this is a coffee that really fits what Fiddlehead's trying to do and what we wanted to do.
Yeah. And just real quick, can you tell us the name of the owner and the name of the manager? Because people think it's so funny.
Yeah. It's my favorite thing. So Darcy's the owner and Marcy's the manager. So whenever I reach out to them, it's Darcy and Marcy. And I feel like it's the perfect matchup of an owner and a manager. Like, what are the odds that those are the two names? And I love it so much.
It's the best.
It's my favorite.
So this is totally tangential to anything about the El Tambo, but you said it's awesome when a former employee wants to use Perk or continue with Perk in their life in any way, but out of business school, Alan has had a lot of talks with a lot of people that are like, what's your biggest goal with Perk? Like, what's the best thing that you do? And one of my absolute top goals for anything with Perk is that the people who leave Perk for whatever reason, we all have a timeline that whatever, go buy an island or something, like go do something else.
Leaving Perk that are buying
retire.
islands.
Oh yeah, when you retire from Perk, you can go buy an
small island.
But no, like ultimately, like everyone's going to leave Perk at some point, right? And those people going out in the world, like I want them to be, I mean, we hire awesome people to start with, but I want them to leave so very awesome that they are the thing that is like coveted in this industry. Like, someone sees on their resume, like, oh, they worked at Perk, like they must know their stuff, or they must be really awesome. And we are super, super proud of the people who are at Perk, and then the people who have been at Perk. And Darcy is a great example of that. Like it is so cool to get to celebrate someone who was here previously and then is still off doing great things and is a really awesome person. And more so than anything we do with coffee, like what we do with with people on this team and the people that managed to find us, and then whatever the person who had Alyssa's job before is directing summer camp now. Like that was his dream job, and he got the opportunity, and Walker's off doing that, and he's still one of my favorite people. He's amazing, right? So anyway, that's to say that as great as it is that they're using Perk at Fiddlehead, I think it's even cooler just to know that someone who previously was on the Perk team is out there just doing awesome things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and to me, obviously, it's like a good work environment when someone's like, "You were paying me, and now I'm gonna pay you for coffee." Like, kind of flipping the script. I'm like, that to me, that just says a lot about like the work experience that someone had. So it's
We are receiving some coffee right now, so if you hear some beeps,
That's
I
a
can't
new sound
control
effect.
it.
It's normally the train
I'm
today.
backing up right now.
Yeah.
that's El Tambo right now.
That's right.
So is the El Tambo you said is something that we're targeting towards wholesale clients? Is that also that's available now though for through wholesale and through and what kind of like where would you look for if I'm a customer who wants to get it through a wholesale? Where does that? Do I have to go stay at a hotel? Do I have to go to St. Louis? What's the
It's also one of our coffees that we have at Whole Foods. So if you're anywhere near Whole Foods, it's also a really popular one at a lot of the markets that we work at. But there are some hotels that use it too. If you stay at the Lark in Savannah, you can get it there. But we also have it on retail too.
Yeah, you
But
can get it
everything
on
we
the
have,
web store if you don't want to travel.
yeah, sometimes everything we always have available on both ends, retail and wholesale. It's just sometimes certain coffees you're just like, ooh, I know a customer who would like this because more so than just our retail folks, I can see it's the consistency of what wholesale customers like because
yeah
usually the relationship's a lot longer. It's a lot more steady, predictable. So it's really easy to know what one of our wholesale customers will like. It's always available everywhere.
no and I mean I think that's an interesting perspective too from I mean I've not been a wholesale customer before, and so it's just it's difficult to identify. As most of us can identify as, you know, the C in your B2C, like a web store. You know, everyone knows what it's like to go online. Almost everyone in America, anyways, to go online and purchase something, and so you identify with that. But to then you also have to look then through the lens of a business and find kind of how does that match up. And I don't know, is there I don't know how I want to phrase this, but like what is the and maybe Alan or Philip, this might be starting with you and Alyssa can provide more detail, but like what's the difference or the importance of a wholesale side of things versus a customer side? Because Perk obviously has both, so why have both? Might be the way to start the question, I guess. But
Well, I can start with when I first started off, it being just me. There was only so much that I could do, and my budget was pretty small. Also, one of my initial goals was to find restaurants who cared very deeply about the ingredients they used, to whether it be local or just that they were treated those ingredients with respect, and then help them to understand how coffee can be thought of the same way. And then the easy kind of sales pitch at the end was, when people have a great meal, the last thing they have, do you want it to be a not so good cup of coffee? And so we kind of worked our way. And then the first few accounts that we had were restaurants. And so and for, like Alan said, for the first 8 years, even as we grew, we were wholesale only outside of, hosting public cuppings and things like that. And it wasn't until like kind of around I can't even think of what year it was 2006 17 that we really started we started having a shop on Saturdays where we did like a prefix menu, and then that kind of just grew into, then we had a shop 6 days a week, but we didn't have milk. And then we had a shot, and then we had the big decision to add milk beverages. And then and it's grown kind of, everything at Perk has kind of been like start at one level and add a little bit once it makes sense. And so we've kind of grown organically, and also kind of interacted with people and customers and see, oh, this is something they want. how can we make it happen? And then we're not going to do it until we feel like we can actually do a really good job. Okay, now we think we can really, really do. You won't see Perk doing anything if we don't feel like we can really do it justice.
Sure.
Yeah, maybe.
If
Who
you can't do it
knows?
the
These
way
days
that
we'll
you
do
think-
anything. Yeah.
If you can't do it the way you think it's supposed to be done, then you don't. What is it? I think there's a Chinese proverb or something. One step forward is better than two steps back.
Oh,
Or
right.
something. I don't remember. There's something
But
like
also,
that.
my
Two steps in the wrong direction.
sorry, I think my internet's messed up.
No, you're good. You're good.
But also, my experience very similar to Alyssa. I was a manager at a coffee shop, and so I think both she and I share this idea that when we approach a coffee shop, we can anticipate a lot of their needs, and we understand a lot of what their at least their manager and below for sure what they might need and want, and how to train and talk to those folks so that we can really try to make a difference, a positive difference. And because when we all know what it's like to have something you need to do, and you have members of your team that are trying to do it, but you would love to have whatever more members of your team. Well, when you're using us as a wholesale partner, we become a member of your team, and we try to figure out how can we help. Can we help with training? Can we help with looking at your menu to see drinks that you may be able to offer, pricing, all the things that we think we can add value to based off of our experience or based off of what we know in this industry. So that's what we try to bring. And I think Alyssa and I both have a very similar background in that. I was a manager at a coffee shop, and when you're, at least my experience is, when you're a manager at a coffee shop, you sleep with the telephone next to you, and also you're, it just wears on you after a certain amount of time. The coffee shop I ran was opened up every morning at 6 and closed every evening at midnight. So it may mean that I'm opening in the morning and I get a call from someone post close that has some sort of an issue. Like one time I have a famous story where a barista couldn't get the door to lock, and it was like 1:30 in the morning. And I was like, if I come down there and get the door to lock, I'm going to be not happy with you, sir.
I always say, like, after being a manager, your favorite days are like Christmas Day, because it's the one day that you're closed every year, and you just know no one is going to contact you about something going wrong. And it's like this amount of relief that you're not going to get a Slack message, you're not going to get a phone call, you're not going to get a text message, because even when you go out of town, you still are like constantly like checking your phone, like, is everything okay? Is everything all right? But one thing I was going to say too about like sourcing coffee is with wholesale in mind. So a lot of times when you're thinking of retail sales, you don't really know how someone's going to brew that coffee. You don't know if they're buying it for espresso, or if they're buying it for iced coffee, or if they're buying it for pour over. But with our wholesale customers, I know what they use each coffee that they buy for. So like I know that one of our customers uses a washed Colombian for their cold brew. And that's what, whenever they're ordering washed cold brew, that's how they're washed Colombian, that's how they're going to use it. So that's very different than the retail side. You never know. But I'm like, when they buy 8 bags of Brazil, I know that's for their espresso. And then I know that the Guatemala is going to go on their drip. So then when we're talking about sourcing coffees and we're tasting stuff, sometimes I feel like my opinion in the room is like, oh, this one is real, especially if it's something that I know someone's going to use for espresso or drip. If it's really different.
Why?
Did you move to a harbor?
What?
The delivery truck felt the need to honk a couple times. Sorry.
No, you're fine. But yeah, it's like knowing what someone's going to use it for. If it's when we're talking about getting something new in to replace those core coffees that we have, I keep in my head, like, I know who uses this for espresso. And if this is super different, I probably need to communicate to them, like, what they might need to think about when they're dialing in this coffee compared to the last one. So that's completely different than retail. You have no idea what someone's going to do with it.
Yeah, so it's not necessarily control the way of like at the cafe level where you you know exactly how to, like, you have a brew method set up. This is the temperature we do it. This is the grind. But you know what they're you know their process, so you can control the input or suggest the appropriate input.
Yeah, I maybe am not the one making the recipes for them, but I can help make it a lot faster for them to make those decisions so that they don't have to waste a lot of time like dialing in a coffee. I can just be like, hey, this coffee is like a little bit brighter than the last one, so you might want to, loosen up that grind size a little bit, like things like that.
I love the body with it.
Yeah, I like body movement. But just knowing how people use stuff, yet again, just thinking, because they obviously have a business, so going back to that waste aspect, you don't want them to like feel like they just spent all of this money on this coffee that they usually get and they didn't realize it's a new one, that it's a different Colombian. So it's like being that person like, oh, I need to contact them to let them know it's different and how it's different so that they don't have to go through a ton of coffee. I think that's like an important role of someone who's doing wholesale, is just having that in mind constantly, of like who your customers are and how they're going to use it.
Yeah. Beyond salesperson, it's manager, as you said.
Yeah.
Like there's a relationship aspect to it as well.
Yeah, and in this case, also understanding their values and all those things that are so important to getting to know folks, so that Alyssa does all this stuff, obviously without actually having to, a lot of it, engage with folks. Because one of the things we find with wholesale customers and customers in general is we don't have a unlimited time, and for the most part, they're pretty busy trying to handle the things they're already handling. So it's a pretty cool thing when Alyssa's able to know her customer well enough to be able to save them a bunch of time and not have to try a bunch of coffees that they may not like, or not like, but might not be a good fit.
Right. Anything you wanted to add, Alan? I just want to make sure if you have anything.
I guess the only thing I would say is you are all about meeting people where they are, and wholesale, which takes a lot of forms. I mean, we have coffee shops, restaurants, hotels, but also grocery stores and kind of those like hybrid grocery store, convenience mart type places, neighborhood markets basically, and online subscription services. So it provides a lot of different opportunities for us to get coffee in the hands of people kind of wherever it is they're looking for coffee. And it's one of those things that, coffee is behind beer and craft beer and kind of that culture in people's minds in a lot of ways. And you can go to any grocery store at this point and go buy, some kind of local craft beer, no matter where you are. Coffee is not quite there yet, but I think it's really cool to be part of something where, I can go down to like Oakhurst Market here and buy a bag of Perk coffee while doing other grocery shopping, and I think it's neat to kind of at least be at the front end of that, even though we've been doing it for a little while.
Yeah.
And to speak to those kind of things with those customers, I think there was an issue the other day where one of the grocery stores, we have a nice coffee, El Tambo, the washed coffee that we're talking about right now, but we also have a wacky Colombia that may not be a fit. And we were dealing with, I think it was Candler Park Market or Grant Park Market, one of those two, that accidentally ordered the wrong Colombia. And before we ever sent it out, Alyssa was like, that's not, I think they've made a mistake, called them up, made sure that was indeed a mistake, and got it switched out before we packed the coffee and sent it out. So it is really awesome, the level of understanding that Alyssa has with her clients and understanding their needs. So it helps on so many different levels as far as everybody who's trying to do these things that are not easy. It's always difficult if they were to get this coffee and be like, this is not right, now we have to figure out how to send it back and all the things. So.
And especially to the fact of like meeting people where there are in coffee and how they're serving. I feel like a lot of people know a lot about coffee, but maybe they're not good I like bringing things down a notch for everyone to understand what they're talking about. So sometimes it's a lot of wholesale is figuring out how to get someone to care about things like TDS and extraction without actually saying those words and relating it to something that you're just like, it tastes really sweet and it tastes good and you're doing all of those things, but you're just not using those words to make it like super foreign what you're doing.
Yeah.
And especially I feel like with business owners, they want to feel really proud of what they're serving. And especially like at a hotel, they're doing a lot of things. Coffee is not the primary thing they're doing. They're just like, I just want it to taste good. You're not going to get into like TDS and extraction when you're just talking about like drip coffee at a hotel most of the time. So a lot of it's just like, yeah, let's let it taste good, and helping them do that without having to necessarily like, if they want to go into the deep dive, that's really great. But if we can just get to where we both think it tastes good and we're doing those things, it's just maybe they're not super aware of that. That's the goal with wholesales. You want to be making sure everything's good, but talking about it in a way where you're not going to make someone feel like they don't know what they're doing, because like business owners want to know what they're doing, so and feel good about what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean that's the sharing good times, right?
Yes.
Aspect of Perk's mission, right? Is a good time. Sharing a good time doesn't mean me telling you this is what a good time is.
Yeah,
and here you go. Now you had it.
Yeah.
It's me learning what is a good time to you.
It's
and then
acronyms.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes in coffee, we all know those people who are just like, they're very used to talking about coffee in this certain way. And to them, it's like, if they're selling to a business, it's like, this anaerobic Colombia is the ultimate coffee. And if you don't think it tastes good, then you're just wrong. And it's like, that's not how it really is. So that's why I always say, I'm like, someone can know a lot about coffee, and like some businesses can make really great coffee, but it's a whole nother thing to be successful in wholesale, because it's that approachability and just helping people where they are, like Alan was saying.
And also, I think that it's important to try to understand who their customers are and what they want, so you can anticipate what they're interested in their needs, and that helps a lot in understanding what they, because they're the ones that are going to serve the coffee, and have somebody, if they're serving an anaerobic or a carbonic macerated coffee, it might be something where the customer looks up and is like, what is this? Like, you did something wrong. And we don't have to be there for it, so we want to make sure when people, their customers, walk up and say like, this coffee's awesome, like, where did you get it? This is really great.
Yeah.
So
at great risk of asking a question that you have no idea how to answer, Alyssa, this is spur of the moment. There's a question I used to hear on a podcast that I loved, that was, if you were any flavor ice cream, what would you be? But I'm gonna make this coffee related now. So if so if you were any Perk coffee that's currently available, we can stick to ice cream because that's probably more relatable and easy. But I wish I would have asked this of Taylor and Addison.
Well, I can answer the coffee one, because I actually just answered this question, because I was just filling out. So I used to compete in brewers, but now I'm on the brewers committee, and we had to recently answer this question of like, what brewed coffee. And I'm not just saying this because we're talking about Colombian coffee, but I was literally like, I would be the coffee I competed with, because I'm like, I would be an AeroPress Colombian, because I'm like, because I feel like I'm easy to work with. Anyone can use an AeroPress, and I'm like reliable. I'm like, that's how I feel about myself. I'm like, I'm probably not going to blow anyone's mind or be that like trendy thing, but I'm like, I'm the thing that you can always reach for and know what you're going to
get. No, I love that. And you actually know the question. So, like,
yeah, I just answered this question, and it oddly does really relate to this. Not planned. Everyone watching this.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, that's what I like about that question. It makes you think about, like, why is this coffee or ice cream. I don't know why I have this pen in my hand. Writing down copious notes during the podcast. Yeah, but
You're the
why is
host.
this
You
the
gotta have a
thing that it
pen.
is? And it's not about what flavor you like or don't like. It's
No,
about
yeah.
right.
I'm
yeah,
like,
well,
I just feel like I'm not that fancy. So I'm like, I would never say I'm not a Panama geisha. That's not what I am.
What?
Not that delicate.
I'm actually curious
not
to see what other folks think what coffee I would be, because I
Yeah.
don't know that I have a clue.
well, maybe that's a different approach to the question. I can start asking, "What coffee are you?" and then, "What coffee are Alan and Philip?"
Ooh.
But I feel like I have to prepare people to let them know they're going to have to answer that question.
I have no idea. If I was ice cream, I'd probably have peanut butter in it, though. Only because I like peanut butter. That's not really how you said I was
That's not the
supposed
point of the question,
to. That's
Philip.
right.
Man, that's such a. I'm like, I don't know what I would say y'all would be as coffee. I feel like I'm going to say Philip would probably be perk up just because it's like switches up a lot. And sometimes I'm like,
I am a
if you look
Gemini.
at, yeah, I'm like, when you look at the history of what perk up is, I'm like, it's like maybe a little quirky. And I always think of the description of perk up, which is the description you wrote, where it's like, heck, even if you don't have a heartbeat, you like it, and it says where are my zombies at. So that's why I feel like that coffee summary on our website is Philip.
That's awesome.
Oh man,
Alan.
I know.
Decaf.
Wow.
I'm
Wow.
joking. I love our decaf right now is in really, really good, by the way. Just to throw that out there. But I was
to be
joking.
fair, we're recording this at almost 2 p.m. Do you want to guess what's actually in my cup?
Fizzy water.
Decaf.
Yeah, because I guess it makes sense too, because Alan's really responsible and even killed, like the mellow. Yeah. That's why. And also our decaf is really good, so it's a decaf.
It's responsible.
Well,
It's a
wow,
responsible amount of
thanks for
caffeine.
taking that.
0.
Andrew,
that
one
question's
day,
coming on now.
yeah, one day we'll get to know better, and I'll tell you what coffee you are.
That sounds great. That's the best part. I just get to ask the questions and not be part of the target yet. Yes, I think one thing we haven't touched on yet is the big how-to with this coffee. So that's Alan. You usually start us off on this. How do we brew? How do we start off brewing with the El Tambo before we dial it in for ourselves?
Yeah, so it definitely does well with a stronger ratio. This is one that I mean, brew it strong. It's a really clean cup, and it just does well with kind of a heavier brew. It flows pretty fast, so you want to grind it a little finer than kind of your average perk coffee. It's maybe it's a cop out to say like throw it in your drip brewer, but like really, it's one of these coffees that you just kind of drink a lot of it. So go ahead and brew it in a home brewer. Like it's great. But I will say that this is one that I really, really enjoy as espresso. Like not necessarily espresso as the base of like an espresso milk drink. In a latte, it doesn't like present itself as much as some other coffees do. But just straight espresso. I think what I like about this one that's a little different from kind of your more typical, or what I think of as a more typical washed Colombian coffee. So we talk about different types of sweetness in coffee, and some have brown sugar, some have more of a like white sugar, or it's syrupy, or this is one when if you pull a good shot of espresso with it, like it is caramel, like unmistakable. That is what the sweetness is, and it's really enjoyable. Like it's really, really nice, and it's also just kind of unique, but not in a. It has something interesting happening that's not big and punchy and acidic or anything like that. So I love it as espresso. I'm going to throw in a third brew, though, just because Alyssa brought up, the AeroPress with it. So, I mean, anything that I say, works well as espresso, like typically works well with an AeroPress. And AeroPress just released this past weekend the AeroPress XL. So we've been waiting for, I mean, a decade for me for a larger AeroPress. So by middle of next week, we should have those in hand. Hopefully, I cannot wait to get one and enjoy it. And I think, I mean, again, haven't used an AeroPress XL yet, haven't seen one in person yet, but I can imagine brewing either a very large cup of El Tambo out of one, or brewing enough to share. If you're
I like
feeling,
that your first answer was not brewing enough for everybody, but just brewing a larger cup for yourself.
That's right. Yeah. And then, maybe there's some left over to share. But it's definitely one that, I mean, lends itself really, really well to an AeroPress because it does well at that stronger brew, and it's already kind of a clean cup. So doing like a semi-filtered brew or lightly filtered brew, just it leaves with a lot of really nice, like smooth body to it.
So is this one that you can safely replace the Brazil, you think, for a month if you're gonna for your morning cup of coffee?
Yeah, I mean, unless you are, so if you're only making lattes with it, I think going from the Brazil to this, you'll miss some of that like coffee flavor in it, if that makes sense. It just won't have that bite that the Brazil does, that kind of nuttiness that it's just, this is a slightly more subtle coffee once you add milk to it. But if you're making it out of a drip brewer or whatever else, it's just kind of your like go-to coffee. It's so easy drinking that I think you could very easily step from the Brazil to this and be totally happy.
Awesome. Well, is there any last comments, questions, concerns, or alibis from Alyssa or Turkey Butt? I just like that you keep changing the name up every week, and I mean nobody can see it but me, but I'm gonna keep calling you whatever you throw in there, Philip.
I don't have any alibis. I did it.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us this week, Alyssa, and thanks as always, Alan and Philip, for giving some more guidance on what's a little bit more about what's in the coffee industry and or behind the scenes of a coffee company, not just behind the coffee itself. So I definitely appreciate it. So hopefully our listeners do too. I think we'll see. I think it'll be 3 weeks this time, right? Because we have a couple summer trips. So all right, we should be back in about 3 weeks. All right. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks for having me.